Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Well, again, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the program today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, I am too. So, yeah, I love your message, your story, and I want to begin with something that really rocked our world 6 years ago was living through this pandemic. Put a lot of things into focus, changed so much. How did you
Mhm.
get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you do things today?
Well, it has changed in that a lot of times I do virtual classes as well. I prefer the in person
Yeah.
because it has more of a that resonance there between people. But it does help some people who have phobias of crowds, and they feel more comfortable in their own space, so they open up a little bit more. So pros and cons. I work with both of them, but as far as like what kind of client attitude has changed, I think be better for worse. Clients are more informed. It just depends on what inputs they selected, right? Some of them are deep into conspiracy theory, and I think the pandemic made them go more into conspiracy theory. And as far as human connection, definitely, I think there's been a gap where people are finding a way to reconnect with their counterpart, so males to females, females to males, and same-sex relationships as well. In the sector that I work with, a lot of men are very isolated from their own gender as well. So we talk about a support system that is needed for men to resonate on certain topics that are more, you know, of the masculine nature.
Yeah. So let's get into the work that you're doing right now. I'm going to
Sure.
put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's
Mhm.
career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer them?
I just help people to be happier so that they can be better human beings to each other, and especially you, because you matter. And we want this world to be filled with children who grow up to be big people that are happy.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream job?
Oh gosh, very stereotypical pro football player, rock star, and yeah, both of those fizzled out. But uh, as far as the creativity part, music is definitely something I still have a passion for and do on the side.
So, talk to me a little bit about growing up. Where were you born and raised?
Kihei Maui, I'm the youngest of seven kids to two parents that were had a lot of loving behaviors. My mother more than my father, but also had a lot of abusive behaviors, and that was more towards my from my father towards my mother. So lots of dysfunctional behavior, physical, emotional, psychological abuse, constant, and it wreaked havoc on my siblings and myself. Some of them, in my opinion, still are in trauma. But we grew up by the ocean, which was a plus. As far as my father, he was always relaxed well, usually relaxed when he was by the ocean. He loved to go fishing, so we spent a lot of time camping along the coast of Kihei, which is the south side of Maui. Kihei, Wailea, and Makena. And, that was the best childhood memories I've had. Just being on the beach. Probably the sand was my therapy, and the waves were were a way to just cool off from, everything that was going on. I mean, I can go into what brought all my anger out and how um, my story of recovery.
Sure.
But as far as like a child, I believe that was my saving grace, the ocean, and I love the ocean to this day. Um, and growing up in a very rural area at the time, now it's a big tourist area, but at the time, it was really small. There was only 200 residents in the whole town of Kihei, and we were one of the 200. And we lived 50 yards from the ocean, and we'd run back to my mother and say, "Oh, mom, you wouldn't believe what happened." And she'd say, "What?" And goes, "We saw a car go by." So that's how isolated we were, for better or for worse. My siblings, we were best friends and worst enemies, and the ocean activities were my saving grace. And my mother had a lot of uh, grace and love for her kids.
So, who was your hero? Who was that inspirational, comforting source in your life that allowed you to kind of segue out of the anger that you had and to become who you are today, where you're helping lives and you're changing lives? Who's been that for you?
Well, I've been lucky to have a few mentors. One of them was my mother. She, tried to mitigate as much of the violent um, chaos or destruction that my father wreaked on everyone. And she was a victim of domestic violence herself. So that is a tough position to be in, to try to help yourself and help your children. Uh, so she helped me to recognize that, my father has difficulties, he has issues, right? And how to steer clear of him, which good or bad, right? It's just functional behavior, learned behavior, defense mechanisms for a dysfunctional environment. Second was my psychologist, therapist, who I inadvertently started seeing because of my son, who was acting out. My then wife said that he needs to go see a therapist. And I said, there's nothing wrong with him, you know, because I can't see the trees for the forest. I go up one day because she can't take him. I see through one-way glass that my son is like a caged animal. I don't recognize him. I start to break down. I talk with the therapist afterwards, and I decide that, I need to go to therapy. And, over the course of however many sessions I could afford, um, he just really released all those repressed memories, and so there was a lot of anger, of course, and a lot of different type of emotions. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I remember one session flailing and just saying how much I wanted to kill my father. And it brought back memories of how I contemplated how to kill my father 50 different ways. And, that's not a good way to think, but that was my coping strategy. So that started me along my journey
Yeah,
to do the
yeah,
real work. Yeah.
yeah. So, who ended up seeing you for who you were? Did you have a moment like that in your life? I mean, there's always the turning point where people see you for who you are and allow you to let your light really spill out to the world. Did you ever have that moment?
I do. Luckily, it's my partner, Eva.
Yeah.
She and I have been together over a year, and we have a very different relationship than I've ever had with anyone else. And it's a beautiful relationship. It's one where we try to be in the present for one another. And I think that's really important. We do have goals, of course, and we do both have trauma from our past. It's not bonding with trauma, but it's the recognition of how to heal through our traumas and be a nice support system for one another. So I believe she sees me for who I am, a person who wants to keep iterating and transforming and being a better version of myself. I know it's cliche, but it is true. And to have an impact on whatever I'm doing and whoever I'm with.
So, making a matchmaker community, was that the
Hmm.
cornerstone, was to find this soulmate in your life that allowed you to feel like you belong, that you can, was this kind of a precursor to you coming up with that community?
Yeah, thank you for asking. That Eva was one of those inspirations, and then it was a natural outgrowth from Purpose Over Pain, my other business, right, where I help people with anger and/or aggression issues, all the way to purpose. Like, what do you want to do with your life to have, that ultimate impact that leaves a legacy of you in the world and leaving it a better place. So, yes, Tethered is a matchmaking site based on empirical data, and it is measuring the capacity for people to have long-term relationships. It's not just the typical dating app where you're swiping and getting dopamine hits, and your nervous system is a little jacked up because you're very anxious about meeting the person and if this person is going to be fake because that happens too, right?
Yeah.
So it is very purposeful the way it's designed, and it is very intentional, and it goes slow, which is what I believe relationships can benefit from. Getting to know one another. There's always the highs, right? Oh man, she looks great. He's yeah, he looks great too. And the other part is like, do we come back down with rest and to digest and rest, right? Rest and digest, so that our nervous system can really decipher for sure if we should continue this relationship. Because relationships are usually invested in, and that determines commitment. That's why people don't get out of relationships real quick, because they go, man, I invested so much time, energy, resources. So this kind of catches it from the beginning, right? Green flags, red flags, and then the system will match people on
Yeah.
the criterias.
So you've worked with violent people for 27 years, and
Yep.
there's a lot of anger that's a part of that. Do you find that with all of those people that you've worked with, that on the other side of that anger is a very extreme love, is a way of them kind of holding on to the things in their lives that are meaningful because they've gone through all of this violence and anger and all of these things? Do you find that underneath all of that, there's a love that's waiting to be nurtured?
There is, it's like peeling the onion, though. You're going to cry as you get closer to the core, and it depends on how much work the person is ready to do based on their past memories, right? Their lived experience, the context of their lives. If there's a lot of trauma, it's very difficult. However, I just work with every person where they're at. The group dynamic helps with the common or the baseline. Like people go, oh, okay, life is tough. Oh, you've had that experience too. So that helps. But then they also need input of different skills, and then in my view, they also need encouragement to try different things, because they're so rigid in their thinking and in the way that they have lived their lives. So that capacity to love is there. Whether they believe it or not is really an individual type of determination, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've had guys in class that don't believe that they should be alive, that they should commit suicide, and they have attempted, prior times, and they're hanging on by a thread. So, these that's where you work with them. They're not at the place where they feel loved. However, what I try to do is from their past experiences, see the silver lining, the glass half full or overflowing, because that narrative can change because we're revisionists, right? As time goes on, we do reinterpret things, and looking at their lives, finding examples that they have reinterpreted things to the positive, and that some of the skills, whether they feel they don't have any skills in life, are transferable, and these skills can be used in order to start from, let's say ground zero, which is the class, and then build them up from there. Help themselves to build them up, really. I'm
Yeah.
asking the questions, presenting the material, letting it absorb, having discussions in depth, and then finding common ground, correcting thinking errors in the process, because and core beliefs that are, could be very off. And it's a process, but it's beautiful when it does work. And there is a good number of men that do find that they are capable of a lot of love. So to answer your question, yes,
Yeah.
we're not a hopeless cause, men.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I know that. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this. How
Mhm.
do you remain grounded, hopeful, optimistic, and full of energy with the work that you're doing? You see a lot of grim parts of humanity and
Yeah.
human beings. How do you stay grounded and keep all of this together? You have a soul and a family you got to take care of. How do you
Mhm.
do this holistically every day?
Well, there is a switching cost, right? So I try to transition with deep breathing, or just doing a go to my happy place, right? Like envisioning something very soothing. And then also just making the distinction of roles, responsibilities. And I have different roles and I can transition okay into or seamlessly, depending on the day, to another thing that I have to do, another role. And as far as like not taking home all the the trauma that men, disclose to me, I just look at it as it's life, it's learning, and it will get better, and that's what I tell men almost every day, it's like you just stay with it. It will get better, you know, be curious, be open, and go from there. And yeah, it usually does work because I know I'm diverting a little bit, but in a group process, when you have it's there's no there's flexible entry and exit points. Men come in at different times and leave at different times when they complete their 52 weeks. Normally, that's the length. So by the time some new persons come in, some other people have been there for a while and they kind of get the idea and they're mentoring the people that are coming in already. So they're doing my work because I helped them to set me up to do my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes it easier for me too, because then I'm not taking so much. Because if somebody starts negative obsessing, yeah, she's a beep beep, and I want to beep beep, somebody else goes, hey man, first of all, attend to the rules. There's no swearing and all that. They do. And second of all, you know, I was in your spot and then they go on and go on.
Yeah.
And then the person calms down.
Yeah. For sure.
So that helps me. But as far as like the big ones, sometimes it does affect me. I had a man who, after 51 or 50 weeks, he had a drinking and a drug issue. He was an addict, an alcoholic. He went through your recovery and came back. So within 50 weeks, it took him like almost 2 years to complete. But he was almost completed, and he was doing well. But there was a gap before his 51st and 52nd. And what I found out is that his girlfriend's husband, because she was still married, was coming out of prison, and he had someone who died in his family, so he was hitting the bottle and the drugs again, and he committed homicide and
Well,
then suicide. So that was a tough one for me, right? It was on my watch, right? I mean, I'm not responsible for people doing what they do when they're outside of class. However, I do feel like this reevaluation, like what can I do better? Because maybe I could have somehow influenced different behavior in that person. So yeah, sometimes it is tough. I mean, I have men from all spectrums, and I've had murderers and rapists and pedophiles and vets with massive, PTSD. Then I've had millionaire businessmen and Olympic runners and, all kinds of like record setters for different things. So, and I've had a lot of homeless people too. So, I see them all and I accept them all because they're all human beings and they all are worth, an opportunity to try to better themselves if they want to apply themselves. So I think more so answering my own question or your question,
yeah.
the trauma that comes to me, it feels like a gift in a sense of, wow, I'm entrusted with this, and now I get to work with this gentleman. So I think that keeps me passionate about it. And of course, my own journey, makes me feel like, hey, if I can do it, you know, others can do it. My story might be, quote, worse than others, might not be as worse as others, but I have a basis of understanding that change and transformation can take place. And so that hope and optimism is there.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you. You walk into a room, there's
Mm.
a film projector, and you click play, and a 60-second highlight reel of your life comes up. Does that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Yes.
Okay.
I have always wanted to be a better person. Um, yeah, I knew from the beginning, when that something was wrong with my family. And in Hawaii, domestic violence is pretty common, and so it's like desensitized. I remember going to a friend's house, and his father was smacking him around front and back, and telling him what a terrible kid he was. And I was like, okay, well, it's happening everywhere there. Okay, you know, uh, it's normal. But something inside of me just said, there's something wrong here. And so I think I've had that sensitivity. And what confirmed it was when my mother and father would both come to me when I was young and both ask my counsel. I'm a 10-year-old,
Yeah.
and they're asking me. So I think my father commissioned me to be in this position. He gifted me because he himself was not able to do that. He did the best he could with what he had. And so did my mother. Um, so I knew something was wrong. My mother and father confirmed it, and I never wanted to be like my father. I did become a version of him, but then I was able to catch that.
So when that 60-second highlight reel, what's the highlight? What are you the proudest, the happiest about?
Raising four healthy children that didn't experience violence. I had like five outbursts, while they're growing up from 0 to 25. And I went back and made reparations, and I made changes. So, to me, that's the biggest, what do you call, that's the biggest indicator of someone who's growing, because they know what they need to do and they do it if they do something wrong, So, um, yeah.
So on this, at this point on your long and interesting journey you've been in life, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients,
Mhm.
everyone, colleagues, but you run what we see. You're the driving force. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Just a person who wants to make a difference. I'm a thinker and I'm a doer, and I like to think and do. And Eva has taught me to feel more, which I'm incorporating, which helps, the whole process of thinking, feeling, behaving. And I mean, I know that's more of a Western concept of, psychology, but it is a good construct, and I I work within it, and I believe it's helpful. The bottom line is, if I'm happier, and the answer is yes. So yeah, I don't know if that I answered your question. I forgot
You
what your
did. No, you did. Yeah, yeah, you absolutely did. It was
yeah.
what's your perception of you? So purpose over pain.life is where people can enroll, register, find out more. Is that the best place to dive in and to get involved?
Yeah, for sure. There's some free tools. One is the gut, heart, mind, energy uh, journaling tool. So online, where you can print it out, and it's a metacognitive skill to help express yourself. And then I have a AI that is built with my type of way of doing things, and it also has a proprietary um, um, set of information there too, that you can draw upon when you ask questions. It asks like three questions and then gives you answers, and it works. I've had a therapist in Hawaii says this stuff is really good, so I was like, okay, great, thanks. Um, and then on Tethered, we definitely have some free tools too. I have a Beneath the Fire, which is a 8 maximum um, men at this time group to 3-part series. It's free, so just sign up. It's open to the first 8 that want to go there. Um, yeah, so there's definitely a lot there on the sites to go to.
Yeah, and I will make
Exactly.
sure I'll make it easy. I will put links in the show notes. Ransom, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your story. This has
Yeah.
been very illuminating. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your time and your thoughtful questions and yeah, definitely questions I've never been asked before, which is great.
Good. I love it. Yeah, it's been an honor.